Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Taking the Lead. This is our video podcast where I get to interview great leaders. Many are in or near the PR and communication space. And this is, I think, our fourth live cast, which of course is very exciting. And sometimes on Taking the Lead, it's always a leader that I respect. Sometimes they're acquaintances, sometimes they're friends. Today it's a dear friend. It's a dear friend. It's Mark Mohammadpour, APR, fellow PRSA, and I always say those initials because as someone with initials, I know how important it is to earn them and recognize them. And Mark Mohammadpour helps people shine in the family room and the boardroom. He is a 3-point impact leadership and well-being. He's got keynotes, he's got workshops, he's got online communities like you're my online community. And he does consulting work with contributors, managers, executives, leaders. He helps companies to create a culture of well-being with their employees. And boy, do we need that today, no? Like me, he was a PR guy. He was an award-winning communications pro, helping Fortune 500 brands like Microsoft, Samsung, and others meet their business goals. On a personal level, two personal stories. He's lost and kept off 150 pounds over many years. He knows a lot about taking action to achieve health. And some of you have noticed there's a little less of me than there was 3 years ago. And that's frankly partly due to Mark's coaching and support. I am so excited to share with you Mark Mohammadpour. Welcome to Taking the Lead, Mark.
Ken, my goodness. Good morning, good afternoon. Forget my first job, forget all the awards. This is the pinnacle of my career.
You've got nowhere to go but down, my friend.
Oh
wow.
my goodness. We've hit the mountaintop. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the warm welcome.
Some about Muhammad and Mohammadpour to mountaintop. I think there's something in it. Anyway, we have a lot of people joining us today, so I'm going to jump right in with questions. Number one, what does a healthy organization look like in 2024?
Ken, as a PR person, we love our data. And there's some interesting data that came from Deloitte last year. They did an employee well-being survey, and there's a big delta here. And the first number I'm going to share is 44. Out of executives surveyed in this study, 77% of executives think their workforce's mental health was better than the past year. Now, that's a great number. Unfortunately, their employees said 33% of them think their mental health was better than last year. So there is a delta of 44% in the perception of employee well-being. And that's not just mental. That data translates to financial, physical, and other areas from that study. And so the thing that I'm chatting with executives about every day, and the question that I'm asking them is, are their employees, are their lives better because they work here every day? And when I pose that question to them, it sort of startles them. They've never really been asked that. And I chat with employees about that as well. Is your life better because I work here? And that's the question that I work with through Chasing the Sun to be able to help ensure that there is clear understanding around roles and expectations, that there's a diversity of perspectives, and that there's a feeling of safety and opportunity for us to feel vulnerable around each other. These are the things, Ken, that really get to the root of employee well-being and ultimately what a healthy organization looks like today and beyond.
You mentioned data. You mentioned we're both kind of reformed PR guys, but we still love data. One thing that I'm very aware of, Gallup's workplace study, I guess last October, talked about the level of disengagement globally. It's 70%. 70%. How, as a leader, how can you achieve what you want your organization to achieve if around 70 or even 65 or even 60 or even 50% of your teams are disengaged? And I've got to think there's got to be some connection between that lack of engagement, that high level of disengagement, and the fact that people feel, the way you've mentioned. So what does a culture of well-being look like from your perspective?
There's two aspects to this. It's around the word culture and around the word well-being, and things that I'm talking to companies about is reframing those two words. The first is around culture. When we think about culture, we typically think about it at an enterprise level. And we think about the executives and sharing their mission and their vision and the values and what the relationship is like at an enterprise level. But the reality is it's a little bit more nuanced with that. When I go into companies that deliver keynotes and I'm chatting with employees beforehand, I'm getting to know them, I ask them what they love about the company. The first thing they always say are the people. And that's a common response. And it's a great response. But when we dig in deeper and we hear some of the anecdotes that they share, it gets very specific. And typically it's around the people that they are working with 95% of the time. And so when we think about culture and the relationship between the employee and the employer, we need to think about it within the vantage point of who are the people that we are spending our time with. And in my career, working at agencies with thousands of people, I wasn't working with thousands of people. I was working with 10, 20, 30, my clients, my partners. Those are the people that were my team. And that is my relationship with the company. And so it's great to think about what we can do at an enterprise level, but to really solve this, we need to think about who are the people within our team that we are building our culture around. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is well-being. Ken, when I started my career, the idea of wellness benefits was a $50 a month gym stipend so I could go to 24
Wow,
wellness.
you got
I know. I don't know what it is today, but in recent years, it's evolved significantly, right? We are seeing more and more support for mental health. And one thing that I want to make sure that we're thinking less about, though, is a lot of point solutions, a lot of software, a lot of apps that are supposed to support mental health and physical health and financial health, and those are great. But what we are not doing is we are not getting down to the root of some of the causes around burnout and attrition and ultimately companies' reputation. And what people are thinking about today is my life healthier because I'm here? Am I eating better? Am I exercising better? Am I able to take my deserved paid time off? Do I sleep well? Do I feel confident? How's my financial health? Does my manager care about my career? These are the things, Ken, that in recent years we have asked more questions about. And so as leaders, the opportunity is to be able to really talk about what the culture is at a team level. And then how are we thinking about the well-being of those that we're working with through the lens of their life? And it goes deeper than mobile apps and point solutions. I have a lot of respect for them, but without getting down to some of the root causes of burnout, attrition, all these other factors, we're not going to solve this problem. And so that's where we need to head today and going forward.
So, for many of our viewers are CEOs or leaders at agencies and in corporate communications. And look, there's no end to what you can do for your team. And there can be no end to the cost. So, for those in the PR field, especially after the 2023 we had, especially in the agency world, we've got to monitor expenses. It's just a reality. So let me ask you this: how does a culture of well-being that you've just described, what's the impact on the bottom line? How do we know we'll get return on investment?
One of the things we have to make sure that we're framing this conversation, I really appreciate the question, is that this is not a nice to have. These are not sort of soft ideas. These have to be tied to the bottom line. The data shows that if you deploy a culture of well-being like we talk about here, retention rates can be increased by up to 12%. Now, that might not seem like much, but if you are a part of a big corporation or a big team, that's a significant increase. Now, what this means financially, the Society of Human Resources Management, or SHRM, says that it can cost up to 150, 200% of someone's salary to replace them. And that's everything from the cost of a recruiter to find them, having to perhaps identify an outside recruiter if you're looking to hire an executive, to lost productivity, to perhaps lost clients. A number of times in my agency days, I was asked to come in and lead a team to help stabilize them because the client was complaining and there was potential that we might lose the account. And so coming in, helping stabilize, helping set boundaries, being that senior support ultimately helped in some respect save that business. And that is a 6, 7, potentially 8-figure revenue impact. And so these are the things that impact companies. And on my website, a cultureofwellbeing.com, I have a calculator on my homepage that, depending on how many employees you have in your organization, the impact around absenteeism and productivity and all these factors, health insurance costs, have an impact on the bottom line. These are real important topics. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation today, Ken, about this, because this is not a soft conversation. This is a true bottom line impact.
Absolutely. Though I think you and I are maybe further along in our thinking of the link between these, culture of well-being and effective leadership and the impact it has on the business. I think we know it to be true. We know it to be true. And it's funny, the Department of Labor has very similar statistics as SHRM as to the cost of replacing someone. And, you just think about, we like to think we hire someone great. We might be paying them more than the last person, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe there's a sign-up bonus or whatever. And we'd like to think in that first month, they're as effective as their predecessor. And in some may be, but they're no matter how senior they're coming up to speed. That first month, we've got to give them time to get the lay of the land, understand their teams, understand the clients. That's not a great time for profitability then, is it? So yeah. So I mentioned leadership. That's our world. How does what's the leader's role, Mark, in creating this culture of well-being?
Well, here's a challenge, Ken. I have another data point. This is from Gallup. 70% of managers say that there are some organizational obstacles that's impacting their ability to take care of their team's well-being. And that's significant. And I think about my time as a manager, when I think about the times that I was managing managers, and it's not an evolution, like it's a revolution in your career.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a major step. And there are a lot of good intentions in helping make sure that managers feel successful. I think one of the big things that we need to make sure that managers understand is that their role is changing and it's different, and we need to make sure that they feel empowered to succeed. One of the things I had to learn was the success of the people that I was managing was my success, and making sure that they were in a position to succeed. And those are things that I had to learn on the job. I had to have leaders explicitly tell me that. And looking back, it seems very obvious, but it's not. If you are in your career, in your mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s, and you're starting to evolve in this role and you're maturing as an adult and then as a professional, making sure that you are setting others up to succeed is really key. And so this is its own, all these questions, Ken, are great and are multi-day sessions. I think for those in the audience, a few things to think about is every quarter, I want you as a leader to do 3 things. I want you to audit your standing meetings that you have with your team. I want you to think about the time and energy that you are expending with them. Are all your meetings 60-minute meetings on video? Do they need to be? Can they be 25 minutes? Can they be audio only? Audit those every quarter, because otherwise you can have back-to-back calls every day, 5 days a week, and that impacts mood. It impacts people's desire to, stay at the company. They burn out, they leave, all those things. The second part of this, Ken, is making sure that we're being proactive and thinking about the well-being of people's career. And this is about having proactive discussions and talking about the roles and responsibilities and their path forward. Some people call these stay interviews. I don't like that word. The idea is not around getting people to stay. The idea is around building trust and rapport with the people that you're thinking about, in not just a short-term capacity, but about the tenure of your relationship with them. One of the most incredible things with Chasing the Sun has been, over the last few years, reconnecting with people I worked with 5, 10, 15 years ago, who we have reconnected and we're working together in new capacities because of the relationship that we initially built. So when we show the people that we're managing that we actually care about their career and their life and not just their short term, the more that's going to impact not only their short-term relationship, but the longevity, because those employees could leave on good terms and then hire you as an agency. Or we've seen this so much, Ken. So that's the second part. The third one, real quick, is around benefits. And this might sound like an odd one, but understanding your company's benefits is really key, even if they don't apply to you directly. And here's why. When you're managing people and they're coming to you with a life change or a major personal announcement, the default can be go to HR, they'll take care of you. But the real relationship between the employee and the employer starts with the manager. Mm-hmm. And it's around making sure that you understand what they're going through and how the company can support as a result. And so being aware of what those benefits are and reminding yourself of what they are is going to be really key, instead of just saying, I got you, we'll take care of you, go connect with HR. It's those sort of 2, 3, 4 levels deeper that are going to show the employees that you really care about them. So those are the 3 things: audit your meetings, making sure you're meeting with your teams on a regular basis, and understanding the benefits. Those are 3 quick ones. There's a lot more we can cover there, but those are the big takeaways that I wanted folks to think about.
So that really got me thinking. I want to respond to a number of things that you said. Number one, I think the most important thing we can help our people do. I think in this industry, we promote from practitioner to manager. That makes sense. But we often, learner, right? Soaking it all in, being a sponge, and then being a practitioner, and then being a manager. Our industry, I'm sorry to say, promotes from manager to leader because you've been there a certain amount of time, or your accounts are growing, or your internal and external clients are happy. But leading people is a new thing, and getting people to understand what a big jump it is from management to leadership, and what are the skills required, and the things that your leaders had to tell you explicitly. And the first thing I get people to say is, never say I'm managing people. You're leading people, because that starts to transform how you approach this endeavor, right? We always say we manage budgets, production schedules, accounts. We get the train out of the station on time. And management is important, but it's about people. It's about leading. Second thought, I think I agree with you completely. Every time a meeting is booked for 60, just because someone puts something on your calendar doesn't mean you've accepted it. It's not on your calendar. And I think, I wonder if we could do that in 45. And when they ask 45, I wonder if we could do that in 30. I know I'm giving away a little bit what we'll be talking about in our next solo video, but I think it's topical and relevant. Always say, couldn't we do that in less time? The one thing, I don't usually disagree with you slightly, but I will look at one thing you said from a slightly different perspective. I like the idea of cameras on and, in Zoom, because I need to read your energy. I need to get your tone, your body language, look what I'm doing here, right? So, someone can say it's fine. And if their body language is, it's fine, that tells you one thing. If it's fine, that tells you something. We all use different vocabulary. It's fine is really one of those loaded expressions where we've got to get to the heart of what they're thinking, and the body language, the tone, the movement, all of that's their truth. It's less about the words and more about all that. So I do encourage people, let's have shorter Zoom meetings, and let's try to keep the cameras on so we can sense one another. So if someone's not having a great day, we know that. Yeah. We know that. But I wouldn't say it's a disagree. It's a nuance.
No, just to evolve that, I think having video calls are great. We just have to audit and be able to say, does every meeting all the time need to be on camera. And when we default 100%, that's when we see exhaustion. It's just we're back to back. One more thing I wanted to go back to earlier in your statement around people getting promoted, and part of it is because of the client. Just really quick, I've experienced this a lot in my career. Very smart people on the agency side have really good relationships with the client, build trust with the client, build trust with senior executives. They get promoted. They don't want to come off the account. But to your point, Ken, I really want to push leaders on this. Make sure that if you're promoting them and you're thinking through the lens of the client, that's great. But we really need to make sure that, to your point, Ken, that they are good agency team leaders. And if there's work to do, we need to either put them in the position to succeed as a people leader, or we need to evolve their role slightly so that their focus is on managing the client and less on managing the people with the team and working with somebody close in hand who is leading and managing the account team. That is a step we often miss, and it impacts the team that's working for that client leader. So I wanted to, because I've experienced that a lot. I'm sure you as well. It's something that we skip, and I really want people to think about. It's a new one. It's an important one.
The one thing I've seen, and fortunately I've coached people through this to success, is where they're great in PR and comms and digital and so, all the stuff, right? And great with clients, increasing budgets, great with prospects, bringing in the new business, and their people are going out the door, right? Like a circular door kind of thing. And the CEOs don't deal with it because the clients love them. And what they don't think about is eventually the client's going to say, it's great. I've had the same senior VP on my team for 5 years, but why have I had 6 account supervisors in those 5 years? And they're going to get it. And the client's going to say, this doesn't work for me. So, it shouldn't be, I can't have an honest dialogue with this leader about their leadership style because the client might get annoyed. No, your client wants their leaders, I believe, to lead the teams. And so you've got to do the long-term play. You've got to help people be better leaders. Let me ask you another question. Tell me some of the challenges or obstacles in promoting this culture of well-being.
It's a great question. One of the challenges is that we sort of get overwhelmed with what is it that we want to solve, especially if you have a team or a company that has a lot of burnout issues, a lot of attrition issues, people aren't taking paid time off and so forth. And so one of the things that I work with teams on is creating a pilot program to be able to help identify one challenge within one team. And the model that I use is what I call the CHASE model, CHASE. And there's 5 steps here in order to help make sure that we are preparing and executing a plan. First, it's identifying the challenge that we're trying to solve. Let's say, for an example, Ken, we are running a team whose middle managers are only taking 5 days of paid time off per year when they're allocated weeks and weeks.
Are they crazy?
You might say, wow, that's really bad. Nobody does that. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how many times I've seen that. So that's a challenge, right? And so we think about what's the challenge, and we think about who are we helping to address this for, and that's the hero. So in this case, middle managers are not feeling empowered to take their time off, and so that's the problem we're trying to solve. And then we're going to say, like, what's the action we're going to implement here as a result? So I'm big on making sure when it comes to well-being that we're talking about value. When I talk about value, to me, that equation is clarity times need. So employees need to take time off for their mental health and all their aspects of their well-being. We also need to get more clarity on the amount of time that they're taking off and their ability to take off what they deserve. When I see companies say they have unlimited paid time off, I can chat for a long time about that, but that is not clear. So we need to make sure that we are taking action and empowering our middle managers to take off, the 4 to 5 weeks of paid time off they deserve per year. So that's the action. Then we talk about implementing the solution, which is about the communication and what's the communication strategy and the manager's strategy, leadership strategy in order to implement that. And then we need to evaluate it. Have we improved this change in paid time off? And what have we learned, and what do we need to adopt and apply? So that's the chase model. So what's the challenge? Who we're doing this for? Who's the hero? What's the action? What's the solution from a communication standpoint? And then the evaluation. And so that is one example, Ken. And I just went really deep on paid time off because that's a challenge. But as we think about mental health, as we think about financial health, other aspects within cultural well-being, it's piloting those within a work stream to be able to look at change, and then ultimately, if there are challenges in other work streams, look to adopt that idea elsewhere.
Mark, that makes me think of two things. One is, and I've seen this in group chats, companies that have unlimited time off, and then, oh my God, that junior person wants to take 4 weeks this year. What nerve? Like, but what don't you understand about unlimited? I mean, if it's unlimited, be prepared for unlimited, or maybe it's unlimited with approval. I mean, I don't know. There's got to be a solution. But if you offer unlimited, you cannot be surprised, should not be surprised when people take advantage of that. People take you at your word, right? It's crazy. That's not what.
And unfortunately, that's the exception and not the norm. The norm is that because there's no structure, people are not taking time off. And it's actually having a reverse impact. Now, there are companies that do a great job of this, and I'm not here to squash the whole idea. Unfortunately, I don't think it solves the ultimate problem around employee well-being that it's intended to. I think it's primarily related to bottom line, which is a whole separate discussion.
Right.
And so again, that's just one aspect, right? There are a lot of other topics that that we go into around this, but we have to pilot these and test these and evolve from there.
So, that makes me think the role of the leader in all this, and we've talked about this here before on Taking the Lead, the importance of self-care, As a leader, the risk of burnout is so high. And, there's a reason when you travel on, in flying, they say, put on your oxygen mask before your traveling companion. You've got to fill your cup to help your team fill theirs, whatever that might mean. So it is so important for leaders to find that physical, mental, emotional zone, that pocket, meditation or yoga or mindfulness or exercise or being in pickleball, marathon, whatever it takes for you. You really need to be there, because if you're burned out, you can't help your people. The other thing is, that great, I think is Ralph Waldo Emerson line, what you do speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. So if the leader says, take your time, take your this, go to the gym, whatever, but then they see the leader saying, oh, I was here for 12 hours, 17 days in a row, and I didn't take vacation. And so what are we supposed to believe? What the leader tells us or what the leader does? What will lead to my success here? Oh, well, I'm going to emulate the leader. Yeah. So I think as a leader, if you want your people to avoid burnout or be mentally and emotionally sound, you've got to live it. That's what will give permission. So we only have time for one more question.
Oh my goodness. This went by quickly, Ken.
It did go by quickly. How can a leader determine if their team is healthy? What are the quantifiable, qualifiable measures?
Ken, it's the 4-letter word that nobody likes, but I'm going to say it. It's survey. We have this sort of.
I don't think that's a 4-letter word for the record.
It is. It is for today.
Okay.
There's this idea that we survey employees, that employees don't like it. They don't want to be surveyed. Well, it's because we don't take action on it. If we take a step back and we think about as a consumer, and we think about the products we buy, the software we license, and we are surveyed by those companies on features, what's working, what's not. And we hear from the company that based on your feedback, we've made these changes. That's a big impact on loyalty because they listen to us. It's the same thing when we're working for companies. If we are surveyed once a week by our employer and the employer acts on the feedback and quickly gets back to us, employees are not going to mind being surveyed. It's when we do not take action that the perception is that the employee doesn't want to be surveyed. No, the employee wants to be heard, and they want action to be taken as a result. So no year-long, no yearly survey, no every 2-year survey. That just takes too long. We need to have shorter surveys every month, every other month, every quarter, that people can act on very quickly, and that there is a 2 to 3 week max time of receiving the feedback, being able to discuss the feedback, discussing with the executives action we're going to take place, and a communication back to the employees on what we heard and what we're going to change. Or if we can't change, be able to be very proactive and honest as to why. That is how we are going to build healthy teams, by listening to them, getting their quantifiable and qualifiable feedback, and quickly making changes. Or if we can't, being very upfront and honest as to why. That is a critical aspect of all this that I think we need to have we need to have a new dialogue about.
So before we break, Ken Gadaka has a question for us. Oh, maybe I should go to the comment section. Okay. Ken, in your view, how has the rise of remote work impacted a company's ability to support and strengthen corporate culture?
It's a really good question. And I think,
well, his name is Ken, so you know he's a bright guy.
Well, absolutely.
You know he's a bright guy, right?
The reality is that this is going to depend on the company. It's going to depend on the work stream. This is going to be ever evolving. We've had the technology for decades to do this. Society finally caught up, and unfortunately took a pandemic to do it, but it's caught up. One of the things that I talk to companies about, and we're running out of time, so I want to get brief, but this is probably a longer discussion, is I want people to think about having 4 different workspaces. One is their home environment. A second would be, if you're able to see people in person, your colleagues, great. If not, we'll skip to the third, which is making sure you have a social workspace, whether it's a coffee shop or a library, somewhere where you're around people. And then the fourth is something that we skip regardless if we are hybrid, in person, or remote, and that's having time blocked out to do work, but we're thinking. We're not having our phones for distraction. We're out in a forest, a park, a zoo, and we're there to process, maybe with a notepad and a pen, but that's it. And so back to the point about culture, I think installing those things for our mental, our physical health is really key, so that we're not in front of our computers for 8 hours a day in different parts of our house or apartment, that we are out and about. Of course, this is going to vary depending on geography and where you're at, but the idea is to be in different places and spend those times in different ways. It's a much longer chat. It's a great question. That's how I would start.
I also want to point out that we all know not only are people named Ken smart, Kenneth means handsome. So, we have that. We have that as well. Okay. Unfortunately, we have to wrap. It sounds like we've got to have you back next year, my friend, because this has been such a great conversation. There's so much more we can explore. Maybe I'll have you interview me. That might be fun.
I would love that.
In the meantime, find Mark Mohammadpour on LinkedIn. I think he's the only Mark Mohammadpour on LinkedIn. If you'd like to explore any of this or ask him questions, link in with him. He's he's an Uber connector. And if you'd like to explore leadership, how to improve your leadership, whether you're agency, corporate, even if you're outside of communications, you can reach me at ken@jacobscomm.com. That's ken@jacobscomm.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn. There are many Ken Jacobs on LinkedIn, but I'm the one with some initials after my name. So thank you, my friend Mark Mohammadpour, for sharing your leadership wisdom with us. And as we always say, till next time, folks, keep on taking the lead.